Hey everybody, welcome to Breakfast All Day. Christy and Alonso. Jane Campion's latest, much applauded this year during its festival run, was in theaters, is now dropped on Netflix. That would be The Power of the Dog. Christy's going to tell us about it.
It is excellent. And if you can see it in the theater, I recommend doing that because it's incredibly beautiful and you're going to want to hear the score. You're going to want to see it. It's an enveloping kind of moody movie. And I think it's worth seeing if you can see it, but if not, it's on Netflix and just crank up that volume and enjoy that Johnny Greenwood score. So Benedict Cumberbatch, who just today won Best Actor from the New York critics, plays a rancher in Montana named Phil Burbank. It is the mid 1920s. And he is just all masculinity and swagger. And like it's obviously a total facade. Like it's so overeager, it's so mannered, and it's like old school kind of rough and tumble masculinity that like it stands out. He's fearsome. He can be terrifying. He can be withering, but he suffers no fools, and he's very strong. And he'll castrate a bull, but he'll also like play a song on the banjo and roll his own cigarettes with one hand. He can do all the masculine, manly man cowboy things. His brother, played by Jesse Plemons, is a much sweeter guy, much more sensitive soul, and on one of their trips, did they go to a different town to do something with cattle? Is that why they're there?
I think it's like the end of the roundup or something.
Okay.
And they wind up in a destination.
They go to a restaurant, and Kirsten Dunst runs it with her son, played by Kodi Smit-McPhee, who is a teenager, and he seems very fragile and yes, he's sweet, and he makes little flowers out of paper to put in little vases on the tables. And when Cumberbatch's character Phil Burbank sees that, he like pounces on that weakness immediately and like is very, very quick to humiliate him in a way that makes Kirsten Dunst's character, whose name is Rose, makes her cry. Just Jesse Plemons is taken by her and by this young man, marries her, and brings them to live with him and Phil in their mansion. They are wealthy. And I get the sense that George, the Jesse Plemons character, kind of feels not ashamed by the wealth, but like doesn't want it to define him. He seems like a really understated, kind of decent guy.
Yeah.
And so it's about how they all do this dance around each other, with Phil increasingly humiliating and terrorizing this woman, this widow, and her son. But what does that actually mean? It's a study of, there's so much I don't want to say. It's a sort of a study of traditional masculinity in, a bygone era, but not so long ago, really. And the cinematography is beautiful. It is like, it's rapturous, but also kind of frightening at times. And the Johnny Greenwood score is unlike anything I've ever heard from him before. He has this great knack, as we've seen with so many of the Paul Thomas Anderson films he has worked on, for like finding a really beautiful melody with like a dark undercurrent to it. And that's definitely true here as well, with more of like a bit of a Western flair and a lot of French horn. Anyway, I really loved it.
Did he do the Spencer score this year too?
Yes.
Yeah, so he's on a roll.
Mm-hmm.
This movie's incredible. Jane Campion is so good at giving us these complicated characters in sort of horrifying natural locations. You think about like the piano or Angel at My Table. She makes the terrain so dominant and so overwhelming at times. I'm hesitant to go into too deep about this, but I will say that I clocked some things pretty early.
Yeah.
That some viewers may or may not, but by the end of the movie, it's pretty clear what we're dealing with here, with Cumberbatch's character. But yeah, I'd say in a broader sense, it is very much about the idea of masculinity, the performance of masculinity, and using masculinity as a shield rather than a sword. And so all of that ties into what is on the one hand a fairly traditional Western in terms of it's set on a cattle ranch and stuff, but it is later than most Westerns. We usually think of those being kind of like late 19th century, and this is early 20th. And you can tell that Cumberbatch's character resents the encroachment of women, of softness, and also of modernity in general. He doesn't seem to be a big fan of. He's always talking about his mentor, this guy named Bronco Henry, who taught him everything. And obviously part of his identity is to sort of cling to this increasingly growing outmoded notion of the West that is changing with modern times, you know. And the movie doesn't stop and tell you that this is what it's about, but it's all there. And the way that he sort of psychologically tortures Kirsten Dunst's character, that piano banjo duet is just like chilling as anything. This is an extraordinary movie. Our friend Ingu Kang, having done an Almodovar podcast, is currently doing a Jane Campion one. I was on recently to talk about Angel at My Table, the new episode. April Wolf gets to eloquently defend the unloved in the cut. But yeah, I think Campion is such an interesting and unpredictable filmmaker, but she definitely has sort of themes and a wheelhouse, and all of that's coming to play here.
And so often her characters are female, right? Like it's a woman at the center of her storytelling. And here it is a man. And while she will put all of the flaws and the cruelty on display, it's like there's no judgment to it. It's like she wants to understand it. She wants to embrace all of the complexity of his characters. She wrote the script too. It's based on a novel by Thomas Savage. And even though you see people doing awful things to each other and awful things to themselves, it's with fascination, I think, and not with any kind of judgment. Also, you know, Kirsten Dunst's character finds a way to cope with the miserable situation she has found herself in. Like, she had all these hopes when she marries George, and it changes pretty quickly. She realizes pretty soon that she's stuck and she's miserable. And I very much believed the way that she found an outlet to deal with that.
No, absolutely. All four lead performances are terrific. You mentioned Benedict Cumberbatch won Best Actor from New York. Kodi Smit-McPhee was also Best Supporting Actor, and Jane Campion Best Director. There's just not a false moment here. You know, I think everything really does kind of ring true. And you're right, she is much more interested in exploring these characters than in judging them. And no one is so good or so terrible that they don't have some yin to their yang and all of that.
And observing them in a quiet way, like watching them do what they do and how that says so much about who they are, whether it's the way Kirsten Dunst practiced the piano, or the way that, Kodi Smit-McPhee tries to learn how to ride a horse, like whatever it is, like watching them quietly says so much about who they are. And you think you know where this movie's going. You think you know, but at the end I was like, oh, okay. And it all fits together really beautifully. And it like makes you want to go back and rewatch from the beginning to see what you missed, what little pieces interlocking that you missed. Anyway, it is thrilling and terrifying and beautiful. And anyway,
I watched it this morning, and I immediately was like, I need to see this again. Clearly, also, blink and you'll miss her. Thomasin McKenzie's in this movie.
She is, as is Frances Conroy.
Yes, and Keith Carradine.
Yes, blink and you miss them roles here. So anyway, it's impeccably made in big ways and small. I'm saying 9.8.
I said 9.5.
Okay. So 9.7 is our number. Power of the Dog is indeed on Netflix. But it's
but Christy says if you can see it in a theater, you should.
It's a thing you can see and should if you can.
I will keep an eye out for such opportunities. Thanks for watching, everybody. Like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us at BeFastAllDay on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and check out our Patreon page at patreon.com/BeFastAllDay. We're recapping Hawkeye. We're recapping The Great. Lots of stuff going on over there. Become a subscriber. You won't regret it. We will catch you guys next time. Bye.